Hi guys, welcome to episode number 26 of the My Invisible Story podcast. Today's guest is SB Fields, who is a mother, a domestic abuse survivor, a writer and a blogger. SB shares her experiences of domestic violence, how it affected her, and what tools she used to cope along her journey. She also shares insights into co-parenting, support networks, her healing process, and steps that she took to get herself to where she is now. I've been blown away by the wisdom SB has to share, and I know that anyone currently going through the same situation or trying to heal from it will benefit from listening. These stories hit different when it comes from someone who's been in your shoes. Hi SB, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. In the introduction, I just mentioned briefly that you're a mother, blogger, writer, and a survivor of domestic abuse. So can you just share with the listeners a bit more about yourself and how you came to the place of sharing your journey to healing and recovery?
Sure. So basically, I was, following a lot of other people that were going through the same thing, and I have, friends that I've gone through my own process with. And I realized that a lot of times the stories were missing a certain part that I wanted to talk about that I was experiencing. So particularly healing, but it not just about the emotional part, but also the physical part. I feel that a lot of times people don't necessarily get into that part of the story.
Right.
And how it actually affects every part of your life. I want to talk about specifically how it affected me as a parent,
Mm.
my career, everything. So I'm really trying to get into a lot of details, and also co-parenting with the abuser, because a lot of us are actually forced to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing that you're sharing the things that a lot of people don't go very into detail with because it's very, very much needed, as I know, doing what I do. So when you first got into the relationship, were there any signs that you recognized of abuse? And if you did, what were they?
At the time, no. I was a teenager. Excuse me. I was a teenager. I did not have any clue at all. Um, of course, hindsight is 2020, but at the time, I wasn't. Um, there were things that I might not have liked that I felt uncomfortable with a little bit later into the relationship, but in the beginning, I had no clue.
Right. Okay. So going along into your story a bit further, as the abuse obviously affects a lot of us who've been through it, what effects did that have on you emotionally and, if applicable, physically as well?
Um, I feel that there was like a progression. Um, like towards like the middle of it, things just I was always like stressed and worried and like paranoid. Like I was always in a state of what's going to happen next.
Mm.
Then eventually, as things started getting physical, it was constantly trying to make sure that I didn't do anything wrong, to set him off, Um, so I just feel like I was in a high state of stress and panic, like all the time.
Right.
Um, it affected everything, like sleeping. I couldn't sleep, or how I could function throughout my day, how well I could concentrate on anything.
Mhm.
Um, it was a highly stressful life.
Yeah. So as you said, it got physical. I mean, did you notice, were there any signs that it was about to go there? Or was it just one day it just happened? I mean, did you see any little signs where that he was going to get physical with you in any way?
Um, no, I was actually truly and honestly shocked.
Mm.
Um, I No, really, and I remember that being part of like I think it was part of the reason I didn't do anything for a while. The first
Mm.
time anything ever happened, I was in total shock, and I was in more shock at what happened than upset that he did it. I just couldn't believe that it had happened because it was something I never would have expected from him. So yeah, for me it was an out of the blue, and plus I had already known him for years by that time, and so it was out of character.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much shocked.
Okay, so did you tell anyone what was happening to you, or did you feel like that feeling of shame or guilt, or even sometimes people even feel like protecting that person? Did you feel any of that? And like that said, did you feel like you could confide in anyone around you?
I didn't confide in anyone around me for a few years, actually. Um, I feel that I mentioned before that I had been in a lot of shock, and then after a while, I blamed myself, and then I just kind of hoped it would go away, and he wasn't like an abuser all the time. So I guess I would get somewhat confused because we would go long periods where everything was great, and then boom, something happens, and I would never be expecting it because everything seemed to be good. You could never tell what was going to set him off. But I was ashamed, and it was weird because people love to talk or talk about how beautiful my family was and how lucky I was for this, that, and the other because he did this for me and that for me.
Yeah.
And I did feel like I had to keep that picture up. I felt I had to keep that whole look going. And then I, felt bad for my kids. I didn't want, them to have divorced parents. I didn't actually want to leave. I just wanted him to stop hurting me. So I went through a lot of emotions
Yeah, I can totally relate to that
until I
because
didn't.
yeah, I can totally relate to that because I experienced exactly the same thing. And what you experienced is called cognitive dissonance, where you have this person that can be nice sometimes. They're not all bad. You have good moments with them, but then sometimes they can be, awful. But then you always look at that part whereby, they're not always abusive to me. They don't always hit me, and they can be a good person. Maybe there's a glimpse of hope that they can stop doing this and become the person I want them to be. So it's like a tug of war basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the experience. So yeah, I completely understand that. So how important do you think it is to have a support network both during and after the abuse?
I think it's literally everything.
Mm.
So my support system during really helped me get out. And then my support system after really helped me to stay out and have people to talk to that were at different stages. Some were just getting out like me, some were, you know, not just getting out, but, still going through their process. And then others had been out for like a while, and they were able to give encouragement and say like, this is not going to be forever. Like, you will get over this. And when I say get over it, as in you'll be able to start living a life. It's not
Yeah.
going to always feel like the world is falling down around you.
Mhm.
um
Right.
so, and they also gave a realistic view, so to understand that you may have to co-parent with this person until your children are grown. You might have to,
Mhm.
but you can do it. It's going to be
Yeah.
hard, but you've got it. Like, you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, a lot of times we are forced to. When I was in it, though, I had a very good friend who was supportive, although very upset a lot at the things that I was going through. Made it very clear how they felt about it, but never really pushed at me like, you have to leave, you have to leave.
Yeah.
And I feel that they handled it in the best way because, I notice a lot of people will just try to force a victim to just up and leave. And it's like, it's so much more complicated than that.
Hmm.
Um, And, I, excuse me, I even ended up running into legal problems, with leaving later on. So it's not simple, and you do have to plan very strategically and very carefully.
Yeah, yeah, and I think your friend went about it the right way. I mean, you're right. There are being your friend, she would feel that she wants the best for you, but I think she handled the right way in understanding your situation, not just telling you to just leave. But you mentioned that you had a support network of women that were going through the same thing. Was that the only support network you had, or did you feel like you could confide in people that weren't going through that?
Um, I would say that my second biggest support was my current husband.
Hmm.
Um, he was very, well, he was very protective, but also um, he was just a good listener. He didn't really try to fix anything for me,
Yeah.
but I still had, like, I just felt very supported, and he could he could understand that certain things that I went through, like, I used to have a lot of panic attacks. I had a lot of emotional, like, breakdowns. Like, I would constantly apologize for everything. But he was
Hmm.
very, very patient with me. Um, and he really helped me to see that that wasn't normal,
Yeah.
but still help me still to process and then begin to relax
Hmm.
and actually be able to enjoy life. So
Wow.
yeah, that was huge. He's just one of those people that he has a very calming sense to him. So it was great for me and it was great for my kids because we got to unwind. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I had a comment actually on YouTube about a lady asked me that same question about the fact that she has a partner and she's going through a lot of the emotional feelings
Oh
that you
no,
have.
it's breaking up.
After,
Hello? Hello?
hello, hello.
Sorry, it broke up. I didn't hear
Oh,
that.
okay, okay, I'll cut that bit out. It's
Sorry.
interesting because I had a comment from a lady on YouTube about something similar, the fact that she's in a relationship with a partner and he doesn't understand the emotions that she's exhibiting because she's gone through that kind of experience. So obviously you
Mhm.
can't speak for him, but is there any kind of advice that you could give maybe that person that she probably is going to be listening to this about how to maybe navigate with her partner that the emotions that she's handling?
Um, when I say he was understanding, I don't mean he had the emotions.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But he took the time to understand
so
you.
it right, he took the time to understand it. So like it took a lot of well, it took him wanting to
Mm,
and a lot of conversation. And like he really has to want to because my husband is not a talker.
okay.
So that's just not his thing. But he did take the time to sit with me for long periods of time to talk um talk things through. He also did research. Like I even would just give him some information, you know,
Mm,
about what I was going through so that he could have some knowledge. And I think that that really helps. So I feel like it takes both. I feel like your significant other needs to want to be part of your support system, but then you can also help by providing information, providing resources for them so
yeah.
that they're just not, because if you think about it, before we went through anything, we didn't know either. And a lot of us just thought something was wrong and didn't know what. So I feel like it's both. You got to work together with that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree. So, reading your blog, some of your posts are very, very, very beautiful and they're very poetic. Did you find writing as a form of escape or as a form of expression on your journey to healing?
So I actually didn't do much writing during that relationship. To my memory, some of the stuff is actually, most of the stuff on my blog is new. And I think I only wrote 2 pieces while I was actually in that relationship. And then I just hadn't written for years. Most of it is stuff that I'm doing now. I feel that in more of a way, I've finally gotten back to a place where I can be creative again, because back then I had everything suppressed. I didn't really feel anything to even be creative.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, I understand.
So it's part of my healing process now, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's beautiful. When I was reading your blog, I was actually, I was like, this woman is definitely a writer, that's for sure. It's so beautiful. And
Thank you.
yeah, and I advise any of you listening to just take a look at SB's blog, and she'll give details of that later on, and just have a read through. It will be so helpful for you. So you discussed co-parenting and parenting as a whole. And I know as a mum of 4, I know the struggle of
Wow.
kind of going through those emotions and also trying to simultaneously heal yourself. So how did you cope with that process without neglecting yourself?
Therapy. I went to therapy 2 times a week. I did the group therapy with other women, and then I did like a one-on-one. And I also had my children in therapy. So I was getting everybody help at the same time, and it was exhausting a lot, because you don't necessarily want to be going to this place 3 days out of the week. It's exhausting, and some days I just wanted to just do nothing. But I feel like having that constant support in different ways for all of us, I feel like it really, really helped.
Yeah.
And again, of course, keeping the lines of communication open with my husband definitely helped. And then I just started honestly being honest about things. I feel that being honest with my friends, with my family, it made things a lot easier, because before I was carrying this burden, silently. And, you're trying to parent and do everything that you have to do, but then you have like that burden of appearances, of what's going to happen next, of, what am I going to do? And even when it came to co-parenting, in the beginning, I was so explosive because I was finally feeling things, and I was finally starting to get to realize the truth.
Yeah.
And they do things. My ex's thing was to pretend nothing happened that bad. So he never denied it. He just had a way of making it like it wasn't that bad.
So gaslighted you, basically.
Say that again?
Gaslighted you, basically.
Yes.
He kind of tried to alter your perception of reality.
Exactly. Always, always, always. And that was his thing. And the whole that I instigated, or I did this, and, just different stuff. And before, when we were together, I might fight a little bit, and then I would just let it go, because it'd be like, if I just let it go, everything will be good again. He had to have like a monthly explosion. But then when I left, I was not backing down. But that was taking up so much energy. It was taking up so much energy in everything. And I was just always exhausted. And then I learned, like, through therapy, like, you don't have to engage. He's not the person to talk to about this, because he's the one that did it, and he's not going to help you heal.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like such an eye opener for me. And it really helped me to release a lot. And it helped me to think clearly.
Yes. Yes.
About how I was going to have to co-parent with him. Even when it came to the legal side, I was able to calm down so much more. So I was able to actually do what I needed, and it worked. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
With regards to your children, you say that they had therapy as well, because this is another question I get from parents who they don't really know how to navigate the whole situation with their children. Now, I don't hear a lot of parents saying that they get their children involved in therapy, so it's really interesting. You say you're really honest with your family. So, with regards to your children, did they understand what you went through, and how honest were you with them?
I feel that I was age appropriately honest.
Yeah.
Um, I don't feel that they need to know actual details. They're children, and I think they just deserve their innocence and happy. Um, what I told them, because they were young at the time, I mean, they still are, but we more talked about what bullying looks like and what
Mm,
you do if you see violence, because I didn't have the control to protect them. I had to send them back and forth like that. I had nothing else. But what we learned in therapy was to set up a safety plan with your children. Um, my son knew what he could message me to let me know something was wrong. He knew what to look for, and I didn't make it specific to his dad.
yes.
I just let him know if he sees this type of behavior, but I didn't specify that it was about daddy. Um, but yeah, we talked about bullying. And then eventually I did tell, when the question was, why, are you and daddy not together anymore? And it was just more like, eventually I was just like, because daddy was a bully. And I just left it at that and didn't get into details, nothing past that. Um,
Okay.
but because you want to be careful, I mean, I don't know if it's different where you're at, but here, because you want to be careful of what you say about the other parent, because you don't want to be um, accused of alienation.
Yes.
I still stress that it was okay to love daddy. Daddy loves him very much. Mommy loves him very much. Like, I had to make sure that I kept it balanced.
Yeah.
Um, and they have a good relationship. So, I mean, I even happen to have a good co-parenting relationship now. So,
That's great.
it's
I think
possible, but
I think it's great that you were able to not put him in that bad light, because I think with children, they still love the other parent regardless of what
mhm,
they've done, isn't it? And we don't want to create that torment for them, that inner torment where they feel torn between both of you. So I think that's the ideal situation there.
exactly. And that was the thing. Um, because I feel like they might even pick up like a sense of guilt, and I would hate for my child, to feel that way, and I never want to be the person to cause it,
Mm.
and I'm fully aware at some point they're gonna grow up and they're probably gonna want to know the truth, and by then, they're adults, and that is completely, they get to make their own decisions.
Yeah,
So.
perfect. Thank you so much for that. That's going to be so helpful to so many people. So how did you navigate the challenges with co-parenting? Because you've discussed a bit about that already, but it's not an easy journey, that one on its own. So how did you manage, knowing that you have to send your children over to your ex, and the complications that inevitably come from that in the beginning, whereby they do their little things and tricks and play their little games. So how did you navigate all of that?
So, excuse me. So we were actually like very explosive for a while.
Mm.
Um, and eventually I actually made it so that I did not have to see him to exchange our children.
Oh.
I had it so that school was the pickup and drop off spot. So it
Yeah.
didn't even require us to see each other. If we had to communicate about the kids, we just text or email. We didn't get on the phone anymore. And then just kept it short and sweet because, you know, we all know what it's like to deal with that.
Yes.
So it just helped to like tone things down. And because it's not like it wasn't even that he was always doing something, but we know how they are as people. So it's not like he was always going out of his way to bother me. But as someone who was going through the process of realizing just how much this person took from you, I was pretty angry. I was pretty short-tempered and pretty like took everything he did because I became like overly aware of everything. So everything was, you know, a reminder just of how horrible he was.
Yeah, I totally
So,
understand. Mm.
right. So I needed the space. I needed that space and that distance. So I think that helped a lot.
So yeah, so keeping the lines of communication quite minimal. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Really necessities. What time was this happening? This is what this cost. That was it
Mm.
for a
Yeah.
while.
Okay. So how did you spoke about therapy and going through that whole process, but how did your process of recovery start, your process of healing and recovery start, and what were the steps apart from therapy that you took?
Um, Apart from therapy,
Mm.
I would say telling the truth. Um, and accepting. Like I had to go through a process of literally accepting what was because I think it's also just part of my personality. I am very much a what I want something to be
Mm-hmm.
that I plan to make it happen. I plan to make it be that way. Um, I had to accept that this wasn't something I could control. I couldn't change him. I couldn't control him. I couldn't fix it. And I had to accept it in order to let it go. But even in that accepting, there was still so much fight in my heart just because it's like, I don't want this. This is not what I want. I want to fix. Like, I'm a fixer. I like to fix. Um, so I just had to accept you can't change anyone. You can't fix this.
Yeah.
Is this really what you want? Is this the environment you really want your children in?
Mm.
Um, and realizing that you can't be a good parent if you are always stressed, scared, in danger. And I feel like a lot of us feel, that you want our children to be in a whole home, an intact home.
Yes.
But it's not really intact at
Mm.
all. And it affects them a lot. And that's
Yeah.
actually something I just realized that I recently actually told my little one. She's the youngest, so I don't think she even remembers us living together.
Mm.
But she asked me, she said, "You and Daddy were married?" I was like, "Yes." And
Oh.
then um, she said, "Well, why did you get unmarried?" And I'm like,
Oh.
because I told her, I was like, well, you know what? We've realized that we're better as friends than
Mm-hmm.
married. And she apparently really liked that response.
Oh.
I don't know why, but she was so happy about that. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't say we're friends. I wouldn't say that we're friends, but she's 5.
Yeah. She's
It can
young.
only get as yeah, it can only get as complicated as whatever. But for her, that gave her like a sense of happy and peace.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that
there's
for
like
a
so much that we
child,
can do.
For a child, I think that's easy to comprehend because she knows about friendship. She understands that kind of relationship. So to her, that will be a good one, won't it? So I think,
Right.
yeah, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. But yeah, that's a if that comes out of the blue, you have to think quickly, don't you? 'Cause,
Right.
yeah, for a
I was
5-year-old,
super
you
proud of myself too. I was patting myself on the back, like,
know.
well, look at you. You didn't stall up on that one. It's just like, yeah, we're friends. We're
Yeah.
friends.
Oh, that's lovely. So yeah, there is one question I have again in regards to your process because I come across a lot of people that
Mhm.
who go on YouTube and that's their initial steps to healing. They find YouTube videos, they listen to videos such as mine and other people's to help them on their recovery journey. But that's all that they do. They focus on self healing. So, how important do you think it is to go to therapy? Because there's a whole stigma with regards to therapy. So, how important do you think it is to go the therapy route rather than go the self healing route?
I think both are important, but
Mm,
because, but no, I don't believe that you can do it by yourself.
mm,
I think that, or at least I can talk to about myself. I could not have done it by myself. Um, Definitely needed therapy, but not only therapy, I needed education on domestic violence,
yeah.
and what it was and all the ways that it was. Because, we all only think, oh, if he does this, like, if you get hit or something, okay, yeah, that's domestic violence. But there's a whole lot of things that happen usually before you get hit. So,
Yeah.
um, no, I think education and therapy are absolutely, absolutely needed.
Yeah.
Um, Especially for people that work with victims or survivors in this particular situation,
Yes.
and that goes for children too, um, because the way, like, we went through it, I got to talk to their therapists, I got to have, my therapist, but then I got to have a few sessions with my children as well, so that we could, you know learn to talk about it, learn to talk about things, and it
Yes.
ends up being really helpful in other ways, because there's going to be other situations that come up in your life. It might not be this, but it helped me be able to learn how specifically to communicate with each of my kids. They're different, very, very different.
Yes.
Um, so I wouldn't have been able to figure it out, especially under all the stress that I was under.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been able to figure that out.
Yeah.
So it would have been a lot. I think that it would have been a lot more damaging, and I think I wouldn't have made as many good choices, and not on purpose, but because of not knowing. So it's better to have someone who's experienced, can help you,
Yeah.
and in
Yeah.
that turn you get to take care of your family. So I'm all for therapy.
Me too. Me too. So we already discussed beforehand, we had this conversation about the fact that your experience wasn't narcissistic abuse, it was domestic violence. But
Mhm.
I always say to people, narcissistic abuse, which is what you know that I deal predominantly in, but
Mhm.
narcissistic abuse is domestic violence. But did you see any narcissistic traits within your own relationship whereby he's not a narcissist, but yet you did see little traits of narcissism within the way he treated you?
Absolutely. Um, the biggest one is he would do something wrong and I would get upset about it. And then he would be angry that I was upset. And then he
Mm,
wouldn't talk to me. And I literally had to apologize for us to be okay. So
mm,
I essentially would apologize for him doing me wrong. And it could be anything, it didn't have to be anything huge. Um, of
okay.
course, in hindsight, like now that I know, when we were in our early 20s, that was huge. It was like a thing. That's when it started, because I knew him as a teenager, but it didn't start until we were in our 20s. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I hated it. And I'm like, how am I always apologizing for what you did? And in my blog, I wrote a short story about it happening.
Okay.
It's called Just a Sandal.
Okay.
So I think I basically wrote it to portray in a not as serious situation exactly what was going on in that relationship all the time. So that was
Right.
like the biggest one.
Okay.
Double standards. There's always one thing that like he could do, but I couldn't do.
Yeah.
Or if I was always like, it would be like being the brunt of his really mean jokes. But then like if you joke back, always going below the belt, always going for an insecurity. Yeah, those were like the big things.
Did you ever experience maybe an argument happening and him starting an argument and then it turning around whereby he's the one that gets upset, or even in some circumstances crying, that does happen, and making you feel like you're the abuser and they're the victim?
Um, where he started. I don't know if it was really necessarily starting a fight, but for instance, there was a time when we were in a store, and he was insecure about his looks, and he saw a guy that he decided in his head that I was going to find attractive. So he said to me, "Do you think that guy is cute?"
Oh.
So I'm like, "Huh?" So I like kind of turned to look, and my ex just stares at my face, clearly trying to find, a reaction. Um, but I was more startled than anything. And I kind of did like a nervous laugh, like, why would you be doing this to me? And that turned into a full blown, oh, so you do think that he's this and the other, and blah, 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 blah. Like, if you didn't think I was attractive, blah, blah, blah. And it was just so insane and crazy in the middle of the store. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, I wasn't even looking at anybody. Like, you're the one that literally told me to look at this person. I didn't even see that person. Stuff like that.
Okay. So the
So,
projection of insecurities and
right. And then turning it into like this argument that I then had to like, I had to appease him to make it all okay, even though he, in a roundabout way, started it.
yeah,
It was just
very
so,
tiring. Yeah. So
exhausting.
it is, yeah, I completely understand that. So what traps would you advise women to watch out for? Like any red flags? What would you advise women to avoid?
If he can't apologize when he's wrong, or if he's never wrong, um, definitely that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Someone who can't admit that they're wrong, basically saying you're always wrong, no matter what they do. Let's see, what else? I think people that have double standards, and make you feel guilty for how you feel when they invalidate your feelings.
Yeah.
You should be able to talk about them without being ridiculed or gaslighted.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things that I wish I noticed.
Did you ever notice, did you ever go through a period of love bombing, where they make you the center of their world right in the beginning, and whereby, you feel like they're the one, or they make you feel like, put you on this massive pedestal? Did you ever go through that?
Not in the Bay. No, we were young. Like
Okay.
No. His thing was after he would hurt me, I got very nice gifts
Oh,
and pampered, and yeah, that
okay.
was that
Yeah,
was his thing. So
right.
not in the beginning. I feel like it's a little bit complicated because like for us, we were kids when we started and things were pretty normal. And then he had multiple traumatic experiences happen back to back,
Mm-hmm.
but never got help for it. And then I was pretty much the emotional and then eventually physical punching bag. I'm not a
Yeah.
professional, but I'm pretty sure he has PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I unfortunately was the one to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because I felt bad for him, that was a lot of, me saying, and of course I knew the person 10 years before this happened, um,
Yes.
and it messed with my ability to be like, this isn't okay, because I'm like, I know this person, this is not him at all, this is literally the polar opposite of
Mm-hmm.
who I've known. um so it's not like he was 17 years old putting on a persona. So I know that person, I know that I knew who the real person was. But
Wow.
trauma does change you, and if you don't handle it, it destroys everything. And
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much what happened. Um, but again, mental illness is not an excuse for
It's
abuse.
it's not.
So I think that's like I think that's something that a lot of us need to remember, because some of us weren't with people that were always abusive, or
Mm-hmm.
um I don't know how to explain it.
You know what? You hit the nail on the head there, because that's something that I always focus on. The fact that trauma comes from somewhere, and
Mhm.
sometimes people miss that completely. And you experienced the person before the abuse, so you had that cognitive dissonance where you know that this person can be a better person, but because of unhealed inner core wounds, it just took over and it manifested into projection and domestic violence and all of that. So, it's this is why it's so very important for people to heal their traumas, because as you say, you become, or the survivor or the victim becomes that, punching bag almost, you know?
Right, right.
Mm.
So that was a huge
Yeah,
that's a huge
yeah,
thing that I had to realize, and just remember, it's not an excuse. So it doesn't make it acceptable, and they're still accountable. They need to still be held accountable for what they do.
very much so. Yeah, very much so. Um, so if you could tell listeners one thing today, what would it be?
I would say that healing is so, so, so important, but it doesn't feel good. And you might feel that when you're healing, you might feel worse even than you did before,
Hmm.
but it's temporary. Um, and it needs to happen so that you can actually heal and have a good life.
Yeah.
And if you've got kids and you have to co-parent with the other parent, Gray Rock, the Gray Rock
Hmm.
method.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, wow. So where can listeners find you, SB? Can they find you either via social media or any website links?
So I have an Instagram,
Hmm.
and it's creatively underscore SB Fields.
Hmm.
And then my website is www.creativelysbfields.com. And you can get to my blog from there as well.
Yeah.
And then I do have a nonprofit uh, organization that I started. It's called the Melanin Support Project. So it's basically helping Black women through domestic violence and maternity care. It's a lot bigger than just domestic violence, though. So, but it's part of it. It's one of the missions. So that's what I do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, SB. I know a lot of people would have found this so insightful. I'm so glad I came across you on Instagram and we had this little chat. Thank you so much for being transparent as well as sharing your journey and your insights, and I think it's so important that, the more we do share our stories, the more it's almost like we give permission for others to do it too and to feel that it's okay.
Yes. And thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
It's interestingly therapeutic. I'm sorry.
No, it is. It is very therapeutic just having those talks. And I think with a lot of people, it's about just being heard, isn't it? And it's about someone just being able to listen to you without judgment.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.